Hey guys, and welcome to another Friday video. If you saw our book club episode on Wednesday night / afternoon, you will know that I had laryngitis earlier this week, so I'm sorry if my voice cuts out or it's a bit scratchy. I can sort of hear it still being a little bit scratchy, and it has been a little bit temperamental today. But it's back enough. I can do a video. I was worried I wouldn't be able to, because why would anybody want to listen to a squeaky, just sad voice for even 2 minutes, let alone 10. Today I wanted to do a book review, and this is actually another storytime review. Again, it's a book that I read with Taylor, and actually this one, it was short enough that we were able to read it in one sitting, and by that I mean I read it to him in one sitting in about an hour's time. If you're looking for a quick little read aloud, you aren't ready to commit to a whole book where you'll have to do several meetings, something short like this would definitely be a good one. But this is a kid's book, which made it extra short and also super cute and funny, and that is Fortunately the Milk by Neil Gaiman. Now, a lot of you will know Neil Gaiman as a pretty good adult sci-fi writer, and I have read not all of his works, but a fair amount of them and really enjoyed them. And I have also read a couple of his kids' books now, not all of them again. I read the picture book that he just released earlier this year. I've read this one. I've read Coraline, which some people might know the movie, but he did write the book for that guy. And I have the Graveyard book, but I haven't read it yet. So that is another one that's on my list of things to read. Neil Gaiman obviously is known for his sort of darker storylines or non-traditional stories, so definitely one to look at if your kid's not a big like traditional boy meets girl meets dragon type stories, if you want something a little bit more interesting. Like I said, this one was a short one, and in part that's due to the fact that there are all of these illustrations throughout the book of various scenes, and if you have a struggling reader or a reader who's still reading chapter books but could start transitioning over into the young reader wall, this is definitely a good choice for that bracket. On top of that, none of the language is too difficult. There are some big words that might require looking up, might require answering some questions, like there's some dinosaur names. There's also a couple references that a kid might not get quite yet, but that doesn't mean that it isn't a learning opportunity. And every time you read aloud or read together, it's always a learning opportunity. So please, if you can read it together, I definitely think this is one worth reading together, especially those dads out there, because the story is being told from the perspective of a father who went down to the corner store to get some milk, but crazy things went happening. So what happens in this book? Mom goes away on a business trip. She lets Dad know that she's frozen dinners for them and that he needs to remember to bring the kids to all of their various things, sports practice, music practice, whatever it is, and that you are low on milk. And it comes to one day they don't have milk for their cereal. Dad realizes he can't put milk in his tea, and that's not going to be good, so he runs down to the corner store. The kids are sitting there. It's taking Dad a really long time to get back, and they posit that he's run into one of his friends and got talking and lost track of time and forgot that his kids were waiting for their milk for their cereal. And he comes home and they explain that that's probably what happened, and he says, well, I did run into a neighbor, but what happens is, and there's a series of events that lead him all over space, time, interacting with aliens, dinosaurs, pirates, vampires, sparkly ponies, and everything in between. Like I said, we read this out loud, or I read this out loud to him, and I definitely think that it lends itself to this, not only because the story itself is a father telling a story. It's this dad telling his kids what happened to him, and although the kids sort of suspect that Dad's making this up and that he really did just get talking and lost track of time, it was an entertaining way for him to maintain rapport with his kids, right? So he's a little bit embarrassed about the fact that they knew that he would become so distracted by another person that he would forget about them, and he wants to make up for it, and in doing so he creates this really interesting interconnected story that's quite complicated, and aside from a handful of things which get dropped, which even the kids mention in the story itself, it maintains that. It like holds all of these pieces together, and is funny and heartfelt and challenges certain things. So definitely give it a try. This one's not quite as dark as some of his other books. There's no death ? There might be undeath, but I don't believe there's any death. There's some death-defying tricks, but maybe not like scary, spooky things, although I'm not opposed to that in kids' books. Coraline is one of my favorites to recommend also around this age, where it's a shorter book, so it's smaller and not quite so intimidating to some struggling readers, but also interesting and fun for kids that are just starting to transition. Because it has this more funny, lighthearted feel, it might appeal to parents of kids who are a little bit squeamish or not quite interested in the more higher stake books like Harry Potter, where there's actual like some scary villains and things like that. It's really just a dad telling a story about some crazy antics, and while there's the threat of death per se, it's never actually going to happen because you know that he ends up back with his kids at the end of the day. So you don't have to feel as if the anxiety of the dangerous situations that he gets himself in. I should mention that I really loved the art style, and I believe that this is an artist that he has worked with before, so it's a little bit sketchy, looks like a lot of line work, and texture, not so much color, in fact, no color, and the way that the story unravels really is helped through all of these scenes, and the text will sometimes wrap around the pictures in a way that is very very visceral. Like you can feel the story being told and being like shown by this dad, of like painting this giant picture, and almost cinematic in its portrayal. So this was a really quick little review. I wanted to talk a bit about it just because it's something I read. I had read it before, and even then I read it quite quickly on my own on a lunch break at work. So it wasn't at all a daunting task to read for somebody that reads a lot, but it's would be equally fun and equally quick and fast-paced for a younger reader who might be struggling. Do I recommend it for adults? Sure, it's a good laugh. It's definitely one, obviously, like I said, that is worth reading aloud. So it has that like entertainment value for both. Some of the jokes might hit a little bit better with the adults because they're references to pop culture stuff that kids might not necessarily understand. There's also the relatability of this story's protagonist being the father and trying to please your kids, but also trying to just in general be a good person, not to lie to them per se, to make it so exuberant that even though they know that it's not real, it is quite fun to go along with him, as it were. What do you guys think? Do you like Neil Gaiman's writing, either as an adult writer or as a kid's author? Have you read any of his other kids' book, Coraline, or The Graveyard Book, or the new one, Cinnamon, which is a picture book, and I believe there's a couple others that he's written as well. What's your favorite Gaiman? Who do you suggest either in the kids department or in the Department of Science Fiction and Fantasy that's similar to Neil Gaiman that I might not have heard of, because I'm definitely a fan and would love to read more stories, but I find his storytelling technique and also just the worlds that he creates very unique. So please let me know. I hope you guys are having a lovely weekend. Happy 4th of July, and we'll talk to you again soon. Bye!